We're going to start with the third piece of insanity and hypocrisy this week. The so-called United Nations Human Rights Council was convened. This was a remake of the old United Nations Human Rights Commission, and they had an extraordinary emergency special session yet again, this time to condemn Israel for the accidental bombing carried out in Beit Hanun, without any mention, of course, of the 2,000 Qassam rocket attacks Israel has suffered, without any mention of the fact that Hamas and Fatah units have managed to destroy the town of Sderot in Israel. None of that mattered. This council has taken on Israel as the singular issue more than any issue in the world since the creation of the United Nations. And, of course, this highly principled resolution was supported by such sterling advocates of human rights like Algeria, Bangladesh, China, that kills 20,000 political prisoners a year, Cuba, Djibouti, Indonesia, Malaysia, whose president, you may recall, a few years ago said that the whole world's being run by an international Jewish conspiracy, and on and on and on, the usual suspects. Well, there was a voice of reason there, not for Israel, not for the Jewish state, for the free world, for Israel as the frontline nation in the family of free peoples. And I want to read a good part of this. As of today, this gentleman said, this council has now held more special sessions to denounce Israel than it has held regular sessions concerning everything else in the world. Raises an obvious question. If the special sessions denouncing Israel are more regular than the regular sessions concerning everything else in the world, perhaps these definitions ought to be reversed and the special sessions denouncing Israel become the regular sessions. Reflection upon the actions of the one completed regular session held in June suggests, however, that this may not be so simple. That regular session specially adopted only one resolution against a specific country, denouncing Israel alone out of all 192 member states. The regular session created a special permanent agenda item to denounce Israel for all future sessions. In the resolution renewing expert mandates, the regular session is a special footnote for the special rapporteur on Palestine, who openly admits that his instructions are to denounce Israel only. His instructions. And so, Mr. President, upon further reflection, it turns out that the only full regular session concerning everything else in the world was in practice and in effect a special session meant to denounce only Israel. This pattern will persist if democratic countries represented in this hall continue to show weakness of resolve in the face of an organized mischief that is both united and energetic, and if some continue to argue that today's subversion of the Council should be celebrated as testimony of its responsiveness, la capacité d'intervenir promptement en cas d'urgence. If all this continues, Mr. President, it will have turned out that under our new definition, the regular sessions are in fact regular sessions after all. But today's resolution is entirely one-sided, ignoring systematic Palestinian firing of Qassam rockets from Gaza into Israel, which just this morning killed yet another Israeli resident of Sderot as she was crossing the street with her husband. Another victim lost both his legs in the barrage. The countries who care to save this council will vote no. Anything else will be interpreted as acquiescent to the destruction of this new body. The man who said these brave words will be joining us right after this. Hillel Neuer, Executive Director of UN Watch from Geneva. We'll be right back.
This is the new 940 Montreal. Let's talk. Call the last angry man, Beryl Wiseman, at 790-0006.
The man who delivered those brave words I read out at the beginning of the show joins us now. Hillel Neuer from Geneva, Executive Director of UN Watch. Hillel, welcome again. Thanks for staying up so late.
Thank you, Beryl. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Hillel, you spoke truth to power. It's not the first time, but in the face of resolutions dripping with words, as Reverend Martin Luther King used to say, with nullification and interposition, does it ever get satisfying?
Well, on days like today, it's nothing but depressing. You know, I'm just coming from the barricades, and as you've been describing, it's truly a sad day.
Now you know why we call our magazine Barricades.
Well, there you go. It's a sad day for Western civilization, for democracy, and for any conception that we have of human rights. We're under assault, and as Winston Churchill once said, and it's what I've been feeling today, we're seeing the malice of the wicked reinforced by the weakness of the virtuous. And I got to tell you, Switzerland, and it's a country I live in, and I appreciate my host country, and I respect it. But the Swiss, their second sentence in their speech, and it was you quoted it. We talked about la capacité d'intervenir promptement en cas d'urgence. The Swiss celebrated the cynical subversion that happened today. The third special session for the third time, only dealing with Israel. Nothing else on any other issue or country or violation in the entire world, including Darfur.
And of course, they abstained in the vote.
They abstained in the vote, as you say, and rather than call it for what it was, which indeed even the media in Switzerland now recognizes it, and this is a cynical subversion which is killing the new council in its early days. Rather than recognize what it was, the Swiss, who see themselves as co-sponsors of this council, celebrated today's action as an example
of what it could do.
Human rights in action.
The words here, words matter. Words are like bullets. I want to remind our listeners, this is the same Human Rights Council that allowed Saeed Mortazavi to be sent as an observer by Iran when Prime Minister Harper called for his arrest there. Mortazavi was the prosecutor of Zara Kazemi, the Montreal photojournalist who was killed in Iran, and Mortazavi allegedly beat her skull open with his shoe. Now listen to the wording. The Human Rights Council, affirming the applicability of the Fourth Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in time of war. Well, they apply it in this resolution to the Palestinian territory. It has never been applied to any of the 9,000 attacks, state-sponsored attacks against Israelis. The resolution said gravely concerned at the continued violation by Israel of the human rights of the Palestinian people. They've never been gravely concerned at the countless attacks, kidnappings, maimings of the citizens of the only democracy from the borders of Pakistan to the Moroccan Atlantic coast. Recognizing that the Israeli military incursions into Palestinian territory constitute a collective punishment of the civilians. Yet never has the United Nations said a word about the complicity of governments, including Lebanon, to terror groups like Hezbollah, acknowledged terror groups recognized as such by our government, Western governments, launching raid after raid and missile after missile, killing and displacing hundreds and thousands of Israeli citizens. How do civilized people, Hillel, even be in an organization led by a man like Kofi Annan, who covered up oil for food to protect his son, who willfully didn't allow UN peacekeepers to protect the hundreds of thousands killed in Rwanda, is there any shame on any of these faces?
It is truly amazing to see how people manage to save face. I spoke today, and sitting on the dais was the chairman of the council, who is a very polished diplomat, the ambassador from Mexico. And of course, you read my speech, and basically yes. I described in the 3 minutes, because that's how much time we NGOs get. It's actually the same amount of time as observer states like the U.S. and Australia get. In 3 minutes, I tried to describe the lunacy of this charade, of this circus. And here is someone who is an aspiring diplomat on the international stage, sitting with majesty on this dais and presuming to preside over something that is majestic, when in fact it's a circus, to put it at best. One wonders. And I saw Madame Arbour, and I have respect for her as a former Supreme Court justice, and I guess as a Montrealer, I'm proud that she's there. I wish she'd be more vigorous in speaking out for things that are right and speaking truth to power, as you say. And she's going to the region next week.
Yeah, she was very vigorous in denouncing Israel, but not denouncing anybody else during the recent war.
She was this summer, and we certainly spoke out against that. She has a mixed record, and we're still hopeful that she might adopt a more balanced approach. She's going to Israel and the territories next week, and so the jury is out on that.
It's not her first trip. She's been to Israel.
I don't know that she was there as a High Commissioner. Maybe
no, she wasn't there as High Commissioner, but she was there before, and that's why I wrote an article called "A Lesson in Law for Louise." She knows exactly what audience she's playing to.